So now we have this great reminder, just in case anybody misses that. Soyez à l'aise à parler dans la langue de votre choix. Je vais commencer en anglais, mais j'ai une deck dans les deux langues, and we're going to go through the deck just as a guideline. For keeping the conversation, kind of flowing in a general direction. But please feel free to use the Q&A button at the bottom of your screen to type in questions as we go. I will probably wait to take the questions at the end, unless I see, as I'm chairing, something that looks like hot pursuit. So I may ask the panelists to chime in response to a certain question, but otherwise I will let everybody go. So I will start the presentation. Are you guys ready? I'm seeing smiling faces, except for poor Allison, who can't have her camera on. So I'm hoping everyone's ready. So my first distillation, I see thumbs up. My first distillation of the wisdom that we got is prenez soin de vous. You must take care of yourself. This is something that we had all wished that we had known as when we started as young Foreign Service officers. You have to look out for yourself. I mean, you'll meet kind people. The system is not always out to get you. I don't mean to imply that, but you have to have your own interests at heart. And I will turn over to the panel maybe to see if they have any points that they want to make related to that. Colleen, do you want to go first? You're at the top of my little row, so.
Sure, no pressure. Good morning, everyone. Good morning, good afternoon, bonjour tout le monde. C'est un plaisir d'être avec vous ce matin et de partager mes expériences. My name is Colleen Leminski, and I'm with the MCO stream, and I've been with the department for 12 years. And currently, for the past 6 months, I've been in a trade position, which is really interesting, cross-stream assignment. I just wanted to give sort of an introduction of myself writ large. Also, during my career, I've teleworked from some interesting locations, such as Tahiti. I'm currently teleworking from Europe, so also happy to talk about how to kind of craft your own career and your own experience in a way that works for you. And I know that we'll get to that on further slides, but just to the first point, I think, yeah, it can't be understated enough. This is first and foremost, and I'm glad that it's the first slide here, because at the end of the day, this is your life, your career, your family. And so that needs to be front and foremost. So, no job is worth burnout, is worth health issues. And so I think that needs to be stated at the forefront. It's a heavy number one tip there. So I won't go further. I'll let my other panelists take this one on, but happy to be here today and happy to answer all of your questions.
Thanks, Colleen. Anybody else? Sasha, do you want to chime in?
For sure. Thanks, Pam. Bonjour tout le monde. C'est un plaisir d'être avec vous aujourd'hui. I'm here in Mexico City, actually, ending my posting in 5 weeks. I've started my career at CEDA in 2007, I think, so I'm almost halfway through. And what I want to say is, and then I switched over to Foreign Affairs when we sort of merged together. Puis ce que je voulais dire ce matin en commençant, c'est d'abord merci à PAFSO d'organiser cette séance, parce que quand j'ai commencé ma carrière, j'avais un syndicat, on était des PM, hein, donc j'avais un syndicat qui était immense et qui était plus ou moins focusé sur comment nous intégrer dans la force de travail. J'aurais bien aimé avoir ce genre de séance-là quand j'ai commencé ma carrière moi-même pour entendre la sagesse des gens qui sont passés avant moi. Je pense que ce qui est résumé dans la slide ici est très vrai, c'est-à-dire, et je pense que je le personnifie moi-même, j'ai commencé comme agent de développement, je suis passé du côté politique, ici je fais des affaires publiques, je fais un peu de commerce aussi. Il n'y a pas un chemin tracé d'avance, il faut prendre des risques, il faut savoir saisir les opportunités pour aller vers ce qu'on veut faire. Je trouve qu'on a accès à un ministère qui nous offre, et surtout avec la rotationnalité, toutes sortes d'opportunités exceptionnelles et de diversité, en fait, dans les tâches qu'on fait. Et donc, il faut saisir, si on est du genre un peu comme moi, à vouloir faire des choses différentes et à apprendre toujours, il y a tellement de possibilités au sein de notre ministère. Donc, j'encourage tout le monde, justement, comme le disait Colleen, à se prendre en main et à faire ses propres choix, à tracer son propre chemin. But I would also like to mention, Pam, that we're living in this world where we think that sometimes we're sort of the center of that world, and we're full of self-esteem and ego. And it's also important to be aware that we're part of a big organization. And sometimes that organization will need you somewhere and will tell you, look, why not taking your competencies and try to help us in that specific, part of the organization. So why not sometimes just a bit of navigation, right? And a bit of just, okay, let's take one for the team. I think that's also sometimes important in terms of career advancement. So here you go. That was my 2 cents this morning.
Merci beaucoup. Charles, go ahead. Oh, sorry, you're muted.
Apologies. I use Zoom very rarely now, so it's very fun to go back to Zoom. Mon nom est Charles Lontin, je suis AGC avec la filiale depuis 2008. Je suis à Bruxelles, je suis responsable, je suis directeur du CSDP ici à Bruxelles. J'ai fait plusieurs affectations, donc voilà. Prenez soin de vous. It's a really important one. Like Colleen said, it's a very important one. And I'll transfer the message I received from a very seasoned MCO right before I went on posting. Taking care of yourself also means when you post, you need a social circle that's outside of the embassy staff. You need to have friends that are not CBS. You need to, and it's not anything against the CBS. It has nothing to do with that. It's just, especially as an MCO, CBS are your clients. So you need to have other outlets to interact with other people. Too often, especially our first posting, we are, our world is just a mission, and that's it. So you have to push yourself to make a lot of social interaction outside of the CBS world, and that will help your mental health. It'll let you loosen up. It'll let you just have a different view of what your posting actually is. Because very often we go on posting, it's a very Canadian optic. Getting out of that bubble will really help you mentally, and it'll make you appreciate more where you are, and you'll discover things, which dans le long terme will make it that you're taking care of yourself. Your stress level will go down. So just make sure that you have a social circle that is outside of the embassy. That would be my only one.
That's a very good point. Very good point. Allison, how about you? Do you have wisdom you would like to share on this topic?
Sure. So my name is Allison Poff. I joined the department in 2008. I'm technically in the FPDS stream, but I'm just finishing up my 5th year as the readiness program manager in Riyadh. So taking care of yourself becomes especially important in hardship posts where you may not necessarily be able to make a larger circle outside of the CBS world. So I think you need to factor in, to take care of yourself, what do you need to be successful and happy on a posting? And it may not necessarily be a great idea for a hardship posting if you're very, very social. We've seen some people struggle with that everywhere this year during the pandemic, but especially in hardship postings where our lockdowns have been a little bit more extreme. And again, the other thing that will factor into taking care of yourself is if you're at work or going on posting with your family, they will have a big impact on your life as well. And you need to make sure that they're taken care of. So don't be afraid to approach your manager if you're having a tough time, or talk to some of your peers to get some ideas, but definitely put yourself first in the grand scheme of things. You're on mute, Pam.
Okay, now I've done it for myself. Hopefully that will break the spell for the rest of the webinar. John Gossel has just joined us, and he is from the trade stream. So we now have, I think we don't have anybody from immigration, but otherwise we've got representation. So John, would you like to share your wisdom on the idea of how you have to take care of yourself as an FS?
Hi, yes. Taking care of yourself is incredibly important, not only just for the various reasons that our colleagues have already previously said, but there's always, this career is a very funny career. There's so much written about it, and people hear about it, and you see it, but unless you actually experience it, it's hard to really describe to people all the various things going on. And especially if you're a woman or a visible minority, the issues will be even greater, because you will face situations, especially abroad, that you may not face in Canada. In Canada, we tend to be a lot more subtle about racism or slights and things like that, where in other parts of the world, they'll be very open about it. And you walking down the street, they're not going to say, "Oh, Canadian diplomat, I shouldn't offend that person." So, the biggest thing I've always found is the cultural change. And you have to prepare yourself for that. And every person is different. And so really taking care of yourself and remembering to look after yourself. And there's nothing wrong with taking like time out to just look after yourself. Do something silly, do something fun, read a book, watch a trashy TV program, something. But it'll help. But I find those are the kind of things that help me get through some of those more difficult times when we've been abroad. I mean, I was in New York for September the 11th, and that was not a fun time to be in New York. And so it was mentally taxing, because you were also basically alone, because unless you were working, you were basically in your apartment because they didn't want people on the street. So there's all sorts of things that can happen, natural disasters, all sorts of stuff. So really your mental health is just as important as your physical health. So I would say, take care of yourself. So find the things that work for you, because it's different for everyone. So that's why I can't prescribe one simple thing. I wish I could, because then I'd probably be as rich as Bezos and Musk right now. But that's basically my message is, look, don't forget yourself and your family, but don't forget yourself in all this as well too.
Thanks, John. Yeah, no, I think these are all great points, and these are things that came up as well in the questionnaire that people generously filled out. I mean, I also, prenez soin de vous. You're seeing some of my my limitations in my translation, because what I was also trying to convey was the idea of look out for yourself, which I wasn't. I sounds a little bit different, but that's where the last point actually came from me. Don't wait for somebody to discover you. Don't wait for permission. I mean, if you want to try something new, you want to do something, you think that you are ready for an acting assignment or a new challenge, you want training, you want to do something, go seek it out, make it known that, talk to people about what you want to do. I mean, I have vivid memories. It was when I first started, like way back in 1990. I was on training in 1994, and there were the TDs in New York that had come up. And I asked a colleague in my class, I said, "What's this about, these TDs?" And she looked at me and said, "Oh, those aren't for you. You just started." And I was dumb enough to be kind of taken aback and say, "Oh, okay, so I'll apply next year." Well, three guesses. Anybody who has been in this system for a while knows what happened next. Well, of course, she applied and she went. And I didn't even apply because I was intimidated. I thought, oh, okay. She was a little bit further along. She'd started maybe a year or so before me. And that taught me a lesson. I mean, if you're interested in something, you want to do something, don't wait. It's a big system. People don't necessarily know you're out there. Put your name in, ask about things. The worst somebody can do is, say, no, you need more experience for that, but try new things. And is everybody ready? If it's okay, I will. Sasha, go ahead.
Yeah, I just want to, in your story, it's great you say she went, because what I've noticed is usually it's he went. I remember I had two employees in my team, and we had a performance management discussion, separately. And I told my female employee, I said, "Look, I think you're she was young, she was full of energy, super wise. And I said, I think you should aim for, being a deputy director in 3-5 years from now, and let's build, your training plan for that. And she said, well, you know what, I don't think I'm ready, right? And then I had this discussion with this male employee, and he was good, but still some bit of work to do. And he told me, in 5 years from now, I want your job. And I was like, well, okay. And I really saw a difference between the two of them. And then I went back home and I slept on it. And the day after, I called my female employee. I said, you know what? I know you don't want to, but I'm going to put your name in that training program, and let's see what happens in 5 years.
And was she a deputy director within 5 years?
She's on posting right now, and I'm pretty sure when she'll be back, she'll be there.
Excellent. I mean, we can go, that's a whole other subject of how these things work. But the other thing I would like to say is, yeah, definitely, I've seen it from women, that people hesitate to put their names forward, but also it can be more complex, right? And as a colleague or a manager, I mean, it's something to keep in mind that, what signals are you sending people? Because women are not stupid, right? Like, the reason that women don't apply for jobs based on potential, or they hesitate, is because that doesn't work for them as easily. Like, so if you're looking at people, think about where your biases may be coming in, and thinking, if this were a man, like the PAFSO awards, when I was president of PAFSO before, we noticed that women were nominating men and men were nominating men. And we were getting very few nominations for women. And I launched a campaign among my deputy director and director friends to say, hey, look at that officer in your group and think about, if this was a guy, would you be nominating them for the award? And we got more awards because people do that. So I know I'm the one who's telling everyone we have to keep on track with the slides, and I'm diverting us, but I will stop doing that. So now I'm going to go on to the next slide, if that's okay with everyone. So the next thing that came up is, be honest with your partner and your family about what is going on, what this life is going to involve. And be honest, I would also say, be honest about what realities people are living in. It's a great life, but it is really, there are tremendous rewards, but also tremendous challenges. And it's not going to be for everyone. And I would say also, be honest with yourself as a single person, because as Allison mentioned, there can be a lot of isolation. It's not, if it's not easy for you, you're not doing something wrong. It's not easy for everybody. So go ahead. I'll go back the way. Colleen, are you okay with going first? Because you're on top of my list again.
Sure. Yeah, I think this links in nicely to the conversation we were just having, and to Sasha and your points. And I just wanted to add from my perspective too, that, I think, and I've studied psychology and I've read, on this subject of, why women hold themselves back. And that's for a whole nother breakfast, a whole nother discussion, but we're socialized to, to stay back, to be polite, to let other people go first. So whole interesting discussion. I think we should have another coffee on it. I'll be happy to talk then, but maybe not enough time for this for today. So on the point of be honest with your partner, family, like just anecdotally in my cohort of 26 people back in 2009, I think what we saw is all of the women, most everyone in the cohort were in relationships. But by the end of sort of 6 months, a year, when it was time to go on posting, almost all of the women, unless they were married or older, had broken up with their significant others, whereas all of the men were getting married and going on posting with the same person. So it's really interesting, and we have to ask ourselves why this is happening and what have you. And I think the women in my cohort, some of them might be on the line today. Sorry about that. But I think women, we choose, or anybody, some of us choose the career and some of us choose the family. And I think that we've been told that we can't have it all, but I think that, you can have it all, but, as this slide says, it's not for everybody. So in choosing your partner and choosing your career, there might have to be some sacrifices being made. Maybe you can have it all, but maybe not all at the same time. So in my own life and my own career, I've had to step aside and take more headquarters assignments to accommodate to accommodate my spouse, or teleworking, you know, using opportunities, leveraging opportunities to explain, like, look, my spouse is doing a PhD in X country, you know, finding an opportunity, finding a teleworking opportunity that would allow me to accompany him so that I could, you know, follow him on his career path as well. So I think there's a give and take. You know, I don't have any children, so I can't speak to that, but I think you have to know yourself, know your partner, and be willing to make compromises throughout your career and life. And you know, our collective agreement is great. There's options to take education leave. There's options to take leave without pay for personal needs. I just took 3 months off to be able to come to Europe, to be able to be with my spouse. So we're very fortunate to have these provisions in our collective agreement. And I think, you know, we should use them and when we need them. And so, yeah, that's the main things that I would say on this topic.
God, I did it again. Okay, so much for that being a permanent unblocking. Sasha, do you want to go ahead?
Thanks, Pam. Là-dessus, ce que Colleen vient de dire, je pense, résume bien la situation. Je dirais juste que partir à l'étranger, c'est surtout quand on le fait en famille, parce que j'ai fait mes 2 postes en famille, c'est un projet d'équipe. Il faut faire ça en équipe, il faut s'en parler, il faut le préparer, et puis il faut se... c'est pour le meilleur et pour le pire, c'est comme dans le mariage. Et donc, moi, c'est comme ça que je l'ai géré avec ma conjointe depuis le début. It's not always been easy with the kids, for example. Transitions are tough. Adaptation, support. So it brings me back to our earlier discussion about, you know, taking care of yourself. If you want to be able to take care of your family, of your wife, of your kids, of your partner, then you need to be to take care of yourself too, and be in a good mental state all the time, right? So that would be my main comment on that one. Like it's a teamwork, and there's no way you can do it by yourself. And as Charles was saying at the beginning, surrounding yourself with good friends abroad is also very important.
Thanks, Sasha. Charles, you want to go ahead?
Oui, merci. Donc, effectivement, le plus important quand on fait de la rotation, c'est avant de partir en poste, il faut être très honnête avec la famille. Il faut que tu en parles avec ton partenaire. Il faut que tu expliques à ton partenaire ça va être quoi, quoi des attentes parce qu'on est en poste. Parce qu'effectivement, c'est le partenaire qui va avoir, like you said here, the brunt of the disruptions will be on the partner. Ton partenaire, toi, tu vas vivre dans une bulle canadienne. Ta vie au quotidien de 9 à 5, c'est une bulle canadienne. Tu vis au Canada, à l'intérieur de l'ambassade. Ton partenaire vit à l'extérieur du Canada 24 heures sur 24. Donc, c'est ton partenaire qui va avoir subir beaucoup des conséquences du choc culturel, beaucoup plus important que le tien. Donc, c'est important d'être honnête, c'est important d'appuyer ton partenaire. C'est important Puis un truc que moi je fais souvent, c'est qu'il faut donner beaucoup de pouvoir décisionnel au partenaire. Right? Tu es ici dans ton poste, c'est ton affectation. Laisse ton partenaire choisir les détails de la vie sociale, des voyages. Donne-lui, comme qu'ils disent en anglais, empower your partner to take the decisions on your life at post. Right? Puis l'autre truc que j'ajouterais, c'est les enfants. Moi, j'ai 2 enfants. Ils sont maintenant, la plus vieille est à 13 ans, elle est adolescente. Elles ont seulement passé 3 ans au Canada. C'est important d'être attentif à tous les plateaux d'éducation de tes enfants et d'essayer de coïncider tes affectations avec les grands changements en éducation des enfants. Donc, la maternelle, le primaire, le secondaire, le début de l'université. C'est important qu'on prenne en considération ces dates-là quand on choisit de partir en affectation. Ça va vraiment faciliter les tâches parce que tu ne veux pas partir en affectation ou tu ne veux pas partir de ton affectation quand ton enfant va commencer son 5e secondaire. C'est pas juste pour elle ou lui. Et ça va vraiment ruiner ta relation interpersonnelle avec ton enfant si tu fais ça. Donc, c'est ça que j'ai pour ça. Il faut vraiment être honnête avec la famille et être très, très patient.
Merci beaucoup. John, you want to go ahead?
Yeah, I'm just trying to think what I could add because it's great advice that's been coming out. I mean, I'm one of those people who went out on a couple of postings as single and then on as married as well, but haven't gone out as with kids yet, which I'm sort of not looking forward to and looking forward to. I mean, I would say, you know, we've been talking about spouses and stuff, and we all know we're not there yet, you know, whether it's support from the department or, sorry, just one second.
Oh.
Sorry about that. As I was talking about kids, anyway. Oh, great, I lost my train of thought. But what I was going to say, oh, okay, I'm sorry. Can I come back? I lost my train of thought and I don't know what I was going to say. So.
Oh, okay, no problem. Maybe I'll turn over to Allison because I know she, as a fellow single person, I know she has a few points to add. And I just need to get up for 2 secs. I will be listening, but I'll be right back. Allison, go ahead.
Okay, so as Pam mentioned, I am single. Both of my postings have been done single. So as we talked about earlier, you need to find what works for you in terms of keeping yourself sane, be it reading, be it movies. The other advice I would give you in terms of this is do not let the department pigeonhole you into the hardship posting simply because you're single. So I've had several people talk to me who have declared that I would be happier on a hardship posting, and I don't think that's necessarily true. I think you need to be able to choose what works best for you. And I do have some other single friends who have had the same experience with the department. So don't feel pressured into taking a hardship posting simply because somebody higher up thinks you'll enjoy it or you'll be a better fit because you're single. Do what you think is best for you, for your mental health and for your career development. So yeah, and again, anybody who's single and going on posting and wants some advice, feel free to reach out, particularly if you have any questions or you just need somebody to bounce ideas off or just chat about stuff, feel free to reach out.
Thanks, Allison. I mean, I'll chime in on that point as well. You know, sometimes there can be an idea that, oh, you're a single person, therefore, like, you have no needs. You know, you have nothing to worry about. You can go anywhere. You can have any SQ. You can, you know, you'll be there for all of the holidays, all of those kind of things. And I would say, you know, no, like, you got to think about it, and you also have to be prepared to stand up for yourself from time to time. And say, you know, I mean, one of the things from PAFSO is that, you know, discrimination on the basis of family configuration or family size is illegal, flat out. And that includes having kids, being married, being, you know, like whatever status your relationship has, but it also includes like not having kids and being single. So, you know, I've had bosses who have been openly said things like, well, the single people in the embassy should wait until everyone else books their holidays, and then they will get whatever is left over. You know, sometimes you're happy to do that if it doesn't matter to you, and other times no, and that can't be expected of you on your job. So just something to keep in mind. And the other point that really popped out for me in this is the idea that, you know, relationship problems that are existing at post are probably going to get worse at post. Like, if you know, it's kind of dangerous to think, oh, you know, we're not getting along, but we're going to go out on post and have an adventure, and it's going to get better. Think about that. Think about that. Colleen, had your hand up? Go ahead.
Yeah, I just wanted to add that when we think about family, like, it's not just, you know, spouse or partner and kids, right? It's also your parents, your wider family. So I think that's really important to consider, because you're going to miss like a lot of milestones. You're going to maybe go away on posting for a few years and come back and your parents will be noticeably older. And so I think it's important not to not to brush that aspect aside and that impact that has on your life. Like it's a tough one, and families are not always able or willing or have the finances to come visit you halfway across the world, or maybe they don't want to. So I think in choosing where you're going on posting, it's important also to consider those factors, how easily you can get home, if your parents are able and willing to come visit you, if that's a consideration for you. So I just wanted to add that.
No, and that's true. And that, that kind of comes back to the single person idea. Like my line in response to this person who said we should all, pick our holidays last was, we're not hatched. I mean, nobody's hatched. Everyone has connections and people they care about. And I was very happy that in this last collective agreement, for example, your family leave has been expanded to include people standing in place of a family member, because for many people, they have a chosen family. They have, close friends and things like that. And, I think it's very important, as Colleen points out, to recognize the whole range of things and how they can be affected by rotational life. So any last comments from anybody? Charles, go ahead.
Well, I just want to add on the issue of relationship problems usually get worse. That's really true. And I would add that having experienced a couple as MCO, having to intervene a few times, getting divorced or separated at post is extremely complex, difficult, and painful. So if there's issues in your relationship, try and deal with them at home in Canada before going at post, because if you have to deal with them at post, it's not nice. It's not pretty for any of the party involved.
And it can also be quite difficult for the community surrounding, a couple in that kind of a situation. So, it's something for everyone to kind of keep in mind. And also in looking at your colleagues and what pressures they might be under, right? People may be responding to issues that are not visible in the embassy, but that, can really affect them at work and so on. John, go ahead.
Sorry, just really quickly. One thing I want to mention here, when we're being honest with not only partners and families, but ourselves, is just because there may be an agreement with that country that your spouse is allowed to work there, does not mean that your spouse will be able to work there. Trying to find a job in another country, especially if the language or the culture is different, can be very difficult. I mean, when I was posted in New York, we had colleagues coming down who were able to work, but their spouses were not able to find work. Or if there was, it was at secretaries and things like that. So especially if your spouse is a professional, just don't let them, speak to colleagues at the mission, because I'm sure every mission is different. But, make sure, when it says your spouse can work there, can they really find work there? Because that's something you really want to think about. Because I've seen some colleagues say, oh, I can work there, no problem, let's go there. No, really investigate that, because otherwise you will have one very unhappy spouse. So.
Yes, good point. Thanks. So it's okay. I'm going to move on to the next slide. I've just got half an eye on the clock, because if I can stay certainly later if people want to, but I thought we should at least attempt to get through these little slides. So going through the main baskets of things. So les gens sont la clé. As far as I'm concerned, that was one of the second big, one of the biggest things that came out of the questionnaire that people responded to is people are really, people are who will shape your experience. So think about, when you're thinking about a situation, try and find out about the people that you'll be working with. And if it's a choice between like what seems like a super interesting file, lovely place, and so on and so forth, and a boss who is a bit of a jerk, and something that is less attractive, in all these other objective things, but with a wonderful boss that you're hearing great things about, that you're having a rapport with, go for option 2. Because a bad boss can make you miserable and bad colleagues can make you miserable in the worst, in the best circumstances. And a great team, great boss can really give you a very positive experience on a file or in a place that on the surface does not sound anywhere near as attractive. So I will turn over. Sasha, you are now at the top of my list. Do you want to go first?
I think you're so right. about that. Actually, it's quite easy for me. Here's my career. Louis Verret, Raymond Chantigny, Antoine Chevrier, David Morrison, Laura Bremner, Isabelle Bérard, Pierre Allary, all those people had such a huge influence on the person I am right now at work and in my personal life. And I think this sort of sums up what you just said.
Thanks. Charles, you're next. You want to go ahead? Do you have anything to say on this important subject?
Sacha, c'est une liste impressionnante de personnes. J'en reconnais quelques-uns. C'est excellent. Des bons gestionnaires. Écoutez, c'est effectivement ça. Il faut connaître, il faut vraiment parler avec les personnes qui sont déjà là-bas, savoir c'est quoi l'environnement de travail. Est-ce que c'est un environnement de travail toxique? Est-ce que le chef de mission est vraiment l'intérêt de ses employés à cœur? Est-ce que le gestionnaire avec lequel tu vas travailler, quelqu'un qui est un mentor? Parce que souvent, c'est important d'avoir un mentor comme gestionnaire. Puis j'ajouterais que le dernier point, and I'll say it in English so that everybody understands, if some people's French is a little more difficult. Faites attention à la façon de vous comporter. How you behave is everything in the department. Your career depends on your reputation in this department. And so be careful on how you are and how you're at mission, because words gets around. And because our department is so disjointed, it takes forever to take a reputation out of the equation in posting. So make sure you're always very professional. You can have fun, no problem, but do it within the context that you are. Be aware of the context that you are at mission. So.
Thanks. Good. I wanted to put something like, "Don't be entitled." And it's but again, you know, speaking of les problèmes de la traduction, j'avais des petits problèmes avec cette nuance. So how to say "don't be entitled" in French?
Oh, okay. Well, that's a different.
No, but you know, you're like exactly watch how you behave, because people talk.
Ne soyez pas hautain.
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 Oh, okay.
Translation. Yeah, ne soyez pas hautain. It means, yeah, don't be entitled. Don't be I'm a diplomat and I deserve this and I deserve that. Yeah, don't do that. Okay.
Merci. And I'm writing down the translation for next time. Thanks. John, do you want to chime in on that?
Just a couple of things. I mean, yes, it's very important. I totally agree with that. With the idea that, you know, it's the manager. Don't worry about the place. It's the manager, which works out great until they rotate out and someone else rotates in.
Yeah, true.
No control over that. And I'm speaking from experience where for my first year, great boss. Last 3 years, living hell. And there's nothing I could have done about it. So just be aware of that little factor. And then the one other thing I just really want to mention quickly from looking at the slide where it says tourism mentor is, you know, when most people think mentor, they think, oh, I have to go find an EX, a director, or somebody else be my mentor. No, there's lots of mentors out there. If you're an FS1, find a good FS2, a senior FS2, who can walk you through the process of what you need to do to be good, to become an FS2, and so on and so on. So, and don't be afraid of reaching out to people who are not FSs either. You know, there's a lot of great experience out there in the department, and especially when it comes to promotion exercises, you know, even the ones for us are open, not just to FSs, but to outsiders as well. So learning all the experiences, the little tips and tricks, they can come from lots of people. I've had great bosses who were non-EXs, acting and stuff, but I got great advice from them. So don't put on your blinders and think I can only go to an FS, and preferably an EX who was a former FS, okay? There's lots of people out there who can help your career.
Yeah, you know, it's interesting. It's just that's one thing I've really learned since I've been doing this PASO president job full time. I've had a lot more contact with AM Canada, which used to be Roma, and some of the very senior people, retired people, and how generous they are with their time and how much they want to talk to people and how much they wanted to talk to people even back in the day. But I was too shy, too intimidated to think that I could approach most of these people. So, you know, reach out to people. And if they seem interested, don't think that they're pretending, you know. And also John's point, you know, you need mentors at different levels, because, you know, it's great to get the tips and tricks on becoming an ADM, but when you're an FS1, you probably want to know how to be a good FS2. So there you go. Colleen, I've got you next.
Sure, thanks. I think the third point for me really stood out, like choose your manager. I think, you know, we've stated, but I don't think it can be overstated that choose the manager, the team, more or less. I mean, people's perspective on, for example, as MCOs, we usually have people under us that report to us at missions abroad, locally engaged staff. But I think one person's perspective on how that LES team is very different than another person's. So take things with a grain of salt as well. A perfect match of manager for you might not be a perfect match for the person that you're replacing. So yeah, I think take everything with a grain of salt. But for me, also it's important, and as John said, you know, you don't necessarily choose who's going to be coming in next year. But I think if you come in with the perspective of I can learn something even from the bad managers, I think that will bring you a really far way. You know, and learning more about yourself and learning more about where you want to go and learning more about the people that you want to work with in the future, and then seeking out those opportunities. Yeah, I've learned so much just as much from the sort of the bad managers as the good ones. So I think that's what I would highlight. And I can't say it enough as well, as Pam said, people are willing to give their time to be a mentor for you. Just ask, you know, have a coffee. Now it's so easy. You can speak with anybody, anywhere around the world on a quick little, you know, 15, half an hour Zoom chat or Teams chat. So don't hesitate. You'll be very surprised about how much people are willing to share about their experiences. And with regards to the, you know, this whole concept of corridor reputation, it's true. The department does have this reputation of having a corridor reputation. It bothers me because it has lots of connotations into it that we're not going to unpack here today. But it is true. And I think my advice on that point would not be, don't be scared of what your reputation is, but honestly, just be yourself, be a normal human being, respect others, be humble, don't have an ego. I mean, it's being, you know, a good human 101. Like, I don't think you're going to have any problems if you're respectful towards your colleagues, you show genuine interest, you're willing to learn. That can never steer you wrong. So that's what I would say on that point.
Thanks. I mean, the other point about corridor reputation is that, yes, you know, word gets around, but also foreign affairs or global affairs, is also, showing my age, is also comeback city. Like the bad that you do may be forgotten eventually, and we see that with people getting promoted. The sad part is the good that you do may also be forgotten. And so that comes back to that first point about look after yourself. You know, don't assume that, oh, you know, I made huge sacrifices to please my boss and it's going to be remembered 2 or 3 years from now. Think about what you're doing and why you're doing it at the time, and you know, make sure that you're not you know, taking any IOUs that are not worth the paper that they're written on, because it doesn't, the glow does not always last. Allison, because Allison has her camera off, shows up at the bottom of my screen, so I don't mean to be putting you last all the time, but please go ahead.
No, it's okay. So just a couple of things to add on to. So yes, your boss can have an impact on your mental health and your well-being, but as can your colleagues. So particularly, you could be at the best mission in the world, but if you are miserable at work, you're not going to be happy. So take that into account. And that's where you don't have to love everybody you work with, but you have to get along with them well enough to do your job. And the other word of advice I would give people, particularly going out on postings, the contractors and the local engaged staff who work at your missions, they're very important, and it's very important to establish a relationship with them, because how you treat them, if it's negative, the rest of the staff will find out immediately, and that will impact you much more significantly than you think it will. So just be nice to people and be polite. Like I said, you don't have to love everybody you work with, but you have to be capable of working with them and being civil towards one another. And I'll just end it there because everybody else kind of covered the other topics.
Okay, thanks. I'll move on to the other slide if that's okay. We're getting to the end, but I think most of our points are coming out. So the last one was, be curious. And what I was trying to convey, what came across really strongly, both in my own career and through in the comments that I got, was, there are things out there that you don't know exist. So try not to have like a too rigid mindset of what exactly you are going to insist that you do. I mean, I'm an FPDS officer. We were just talking about before we started. I've only ever had assignments in FPDS, but yet I've had I had one trade assignment, one TD in trade in Moscow before, when I was a brand new FS1. And then I've had 5 overseas assignments, and only 2 of them have actually been at inside Canadian missions abroad in the political section. I've been a military POLAD in Afghanistan twice, and I was a political advisor at the Office of the High Representative in Bosnia, all 3 times on loan. I had no idea those possibilities existed. I've also managed to create my own job in the department several times. I created a special coordinator for Iran position when I was in the Middle East division and saw a need. I created, in a sense, the full-time presidency for PAFSO because I saw a need, and I started to feel like I was at a point where I was shuffling around the same assignments and felt like, okay, I can be the one to do this and see if it works. So there are things out there that you don't know exist. So try to keep an open mind, and try to, the expression, we bloom where you're planted. Make the best of things that maybe don't seem to be so interesting, and find out what you can. Maybe I'm going to go to the bottom because I'm feeling bad about Allison being last all the time. So maybe I'll go from the bottom up this time. So Allison, do you want to chime in on the subject of being curious?
Sure. Like Pam highlighted, don't be afraid to go out the department has deemed as your stream. So the position I'm in now is an MCO position. When I was in Haiti, while it was classified as a political position, it was back when START was doing construction projects. So it was much more of almost a development type posting. So do what interests you. And don't be afraid to reach outside of your comfort zone, to try something new. You may like it, you may not, but at least you'll know. So I'll leave it with that.
Since Pam stepped away, maybe I'll step in for Pam for a second. Charles, do you want to say anything on this topic?
Oui, merci. Yeah, be curious. I find, this is very much it seems to be very much applicable to career, but I would also be curious on your posting. Just don't be afraid to go in a posting that you didn't think would be an option. I mean, all postings are good. It's very rare that somebody comes out of posting and is horrible. So whenever an opportunity arises, especially when it comes to posting, just take it. Just go, as long as you can do it, as long as it fits your family configuration and whatnot. But don't be afraid to just take it and just go for it. And it'll be a great experience. And that can be applicable to your career as well as your postings.
Again, sorry. It's thanks. Yeah, those are very, very important points. Sorry, where were we? Have Sasha, Charles, John, do you want to chime in? And thanks for stepping in for me as chair there for a second while I was getting coffee.
As the executive vice president of PASO, I'm used to doing that. So
yes.
I just want to say, for those of you who don't know me, of my 22-year career in the department, for 15, 16 years, I was a political officer and then became a trade officer. So, when they're talking about different experiences, it's not just on postings. If you decide you want to change your career path and don't want to be a political officer or an MCO or a trade commissioner or whatever, those possibilities exist. So you're not pigeonholed necessarily in the stream that you were brought in on. So, keep that in mind. Don't feel that you're going to be pigeonholed, because I mean, when we first joined, which was quite a while ago, last century, in those days you were basically pigeonholed and you were in your category. But I've seen people moving around, so don't forget that opportunity. And as Pam and the others have said, take assignments, not even just at post, but at headquarters as well, that are outside your, even your comfort zone. But if you feel like you want to do it, go for it. I mean, and try it. And I think you'll find that most of the time they'll be really rewarding. Other times they'll be, okay, maybe not so great, but it's a learning experience. And as the last point is, it's about experiences. I think we all became FSs for a reason, because we're curious, I think, about the world, and not just Canada. There's a lot of people who love to say, come on, we've all met the people who say, I would love a posting to London, New York, Paris, and go there and then complain about, how different it was. Oh, the culture was different. They did this. They drive on the funny side of the road and things like that. And you're like, well, that's why I joined. I want to have those experiences. Otherwise, I'd just stay in Canada. And so, the great thing about all of you as colleagues is that I'd like to think that we all joined because we're curious and we want to know more about the world. Canada's an awesome country. It's a great country, but that doesn't mean we don't have things to learn from the rest of the world either. Thanks.
Yeah, no, thanks, John. Just one note on the idea of cross-stream assignments. That we were talking about that a little bit before we started. One point I would like to make, just to sort of nuance that, and I didn't have a spot to put it in, is especially for people who are new. Think about though what job you're being hired for. Look at your letter of offer. And in general, don't take a job that you don't want, right? Because while you can explore cross-stream assignments, you can usually, get some different experience. Switching streams is not automatic. And we have at the PAFSO office had some people come and say, they've taken a position in a stream, they don't really want to do that work, and they want to move to another stream, and it's not always possible. So that is something I think to keep in mind. You probably can get some variation in your experience, but it's not a good idea to assume that you're going to be able to make a big change automatically. Colleen, can I go to you?
I'll give the floor to Sasha because I think he needs to leave, so maybe he wants to have some final words.
Sorry, Sasha.
No problem. Just to say that I completely agree with John. That's why I joined this department, because I'm curious, and then that should be the basis of why we're doing that job. So thank you so much for the opportunity, Pam. As I was saying in the chat, school is starting again, presential in Mexico, so I need to take the kids to school, and I'm super happy because I'm going to have a quiet day here in my apartment. So thank you very much, everybody. And,
thanks. And sorry for not speaking. For some reason, I thought you were speaking when I'd gotten coffee. So okay, sorry about that. And thank you for coming out to this.
Merci beaucoup. Au revoir.
Thanks. Okay, thanks, Colleen. Thanks for flagging that to me. Did you want to go ahead? Do you have anything to add?
Sure. I think I'll give an anecdote. So, in line with don't let anybody tell you what you should want. Don't let anybody tell you who you are and what skills that you have. They don't know. They don't know you. So do you know the amount of times that I've been told in the recent past, I didn't have the instincts or what have you to work in such and such a stream? Well, guess what? I'm working in such and such a stream and it's working out great, and I'm, great reviews and so on. So I think that there will be a lot of naysayers. There will be people that will want to put you, put baby into a corner, but just, I think do you, and your strengths, what you bring to the table. And so underpinning all of this is the ability to sell yourself, really. Like, all of us at the end of the day need to be great salespeople. We're doing interviews all the time, you know, whether to go abroad, whether for HQ assignments, whether for other opportunities. I think one of the biggest pieces of advice that I could give you would be, you know, take Toastmasters or public speaking skills, or, you know, briefing 101, elevator briefing kind of courses to to bolster those skills, because that is first and foremost what really this department respects in large ways, the ability for people to kind of sell themselves, put themselves forward. And those are skills in any stream that will help you to go far. So yeah, don't let anybody tell you who you are and what you should want and what you should do. And also be open to opportunities. Some of my best assignments, and you'll hear this from so many people, that some of their best assignments have been ones that they didn't necessarily even apply for. I myself have applied on cross-stream assignments when MCOs were still classified differently, and it still wasn't cool to kind of cross-stream. I got called by a manager who knew me and offered me a great job, and from that it just skyrocketed into other opportunities. So I think, again, with my whole sort of reframing perspective, if it's an assignment that you don't think that that it's for you, try to look at the positive, what you can learn from it, how you can grow from it, what contacts you can make, what references you can make, and how it can lead you to other opportunities that you may be more interested in.
Yeah. No, thanks, Colleen. I think those are very important points. And the last one, focus on the experience rather than on prestige and promotion. I mean, of course, everyone wants to be promoted, and we all want to do cool things, but sometimes, and that links to the don't let anybody tell you what you should want. Not everybody wants to be senior management and have all this corporate responsibility. Some people are really interested in foreign policy or trade, or dealing with complex consular cases, or helping people immigrate to Canada, and they don't they don't want to be in charge of large teams, which is a skill in and of itself, right? And that's another aspect that I think is probably needs to come out here, is the whole idea of management is a little bit special at CAC. They don't necessarily get the right training. They're chosen sometimes for skills that are not necessarily obvious to the managees. But it's worth having a look at what they are doing right. When you see somebody getting promoted and you wonder, like, how the heck did that happen? Well, act like that's a question that could actually be answered, and look at what they are doing. And sometimes the answer, Dr. Phil has a famous line that says, if somebody's getting the things that you're not getting, it's because they're doing some of the things you're not willing to do. And some of it may be positive and some of it may be negative. I mean, that person may be killing themselves with extra hours. They may be, I'm trying to think of a polite way of what I want to say. They may be cozying up to senior management in, to their boss in ways that you're not comfortable with. They may be looking the other way on other things, or they may really have some skills that, that you could learn. So it is worth thinking about that kind of thing. I'm ready to, unless panelists wants to chime in, I'm ready to move to the second last slide before questions, which is La Passe en travail pour vous. So we're here for you. We do advocacy on behalf of the larger Foreign Service Group. We provide representation services when people are having difficulties with things that are related to the collective agreement. If you need to file a grievance, if there's something is happening, you're facing discrimination, you're having problems getting the system to work for you in a fair way, you're having Phoenix problems, those kinds of things. We also are a professional association, so we do do events like this for education and to, you know, advance the skills of the group and to, you know, to promote discussion on issues and things that are important. But, you know, with the exception of me for now, and we're going to be holding a vote on whether the PAFSO presidency stays as a full-time permanent position. Your PAFSO, the executive committee colleagues, John and the others, they're all volunteers. And most of our especially on the professional association side, most of our professional development activities are run by volunteers. So you'll get more out of PAFSO if you put a bit into PAFSO. You know, if you see something that should be happening, please, you know, think about how you might be able to contribute to that and help us move the markers. Oh, we just lost John. I don't know if that was an editorial comment. So, but does anybody else want to? Oh, he's back. John, maybe I'll go to you as the other member of PAFSO XCOM first to see if you want to comment on what PAFSO can do for people. There's many of us, I mean, I didn't know about PAFSO really when I first started. It took me, it wasn't for about 6-7 years into my career after my first posting that I realized what we do and that there are resources to help you if you are stuck in a bad situation, or, you know, even if you see something that you think can benefit the FS group. Allison's got her hand up, so I'll go to her and see if John wants to chime in later. Allison, go ahead. Allison is also a former XCOM.
So I'll just add, I've been on the XCOM twice. I'll probably be on it again when I head back to Ottawa this summer. So my advice to you would be, before you go to PAFSO, make sure you've taken all the steps that you need to first, because it's much more efficient if you've worked it out, if you've submitted the forms, let's say for a pay problem with Phoenix, and then go to PAFSO saying it's all been done, as opposed to right at the beginning. Yes, they're there to help, but the office is fairly small. So if everybody goes to them with the same question, I mean, we're all resourceful. We figure stuff out in foreign countries all the time. So try to take some first steps yourself. And then if you're really stuck or you just need advice, then reach out. But talk to other members first, because other members have gone through the same thing. And they can provide you with advice and guidance about where to find forms and who to speak to. And sometimes that actually makes stuff move a lot quicker.
Thanks, Allison. And the other point too is, you know, have a look at our website. There's the main website that has a lot of resources, you know, Q's and A's on COVID and various other issues, advice on filing complaints on, you know, before the Public Service Labor Relations Board, on staffing, all kinds of things. There's also My PAFSO, which is our internal website that has a kind of a forum and a wiki where you can post things that are a bit more private, you know, that you don't necessarily, like there's a Facebook group that's not run by PAFSO, but that, you know, everybody is in. So we use partly to communicate, but sometimes, you know, there are things that don't belong there. And there are tons of resources. So if you have an issue, like Allison says, you know, good idea to visit the website, have a look, see what you can do, and then, you know, we can help you. But John, did you want to chime in on that as the other current serving PAFSO member, XCOM member?
No, well, as usual, you've covered it all, Pam, which doesn't leave a lot for me. Yeah, no, I don't think I have anything to add at this moment. You know, other than, you know, the usual pitch, you know, which Allison has already discussed, that, you know, if you're coming back, or even if you're not, even if you're abroad, and if you're interested in serving on XCOM, think about it. We can always use, we always need people, and even if you cannot be involved in XCOM, there's lots of other ways to help PAFSO by participating on the various committees and sounding boards and the rest of it. So, you know, PAFSO is only as strong as its members, and we're there to represent you in your interests and your family's interests, because it's not just us that we represent, but it's also to a certain extent your families. as well. So if there's anything that we can do, if you ever have suggestions, you know, we're there. So reach out to us. For those of us on XCOM, we're always there and happy to help.
Thanks, John. Anybody, Colleen, did you want to chime in? Anything to say about PASO?
No,
You were also on XCOM for a while as well, sort of. Yeah, this is great. We've got a good cross section.
Yeah, no, I just encouraging everyone to, you know, to volunteer where you can. There's different groups. So if there's some area that you're interested in, it's also could be a good opportunity for your CV, right? Like, let's say you don't have any, you know, supervisory experience, but you want to join the sort of the HR subcommittee. This could be a good way to bolster your resume. So look at it as a strategic opportunity as well.
Thanks. Yeah, that's where I think we could do a little bit better job as PAPSO XCOM in selling that experience to people, because you do, you know, you definitely have interactions at a level that you don't normally have, and it's a good opportunity to learn about a lot of issues, you know, HR issues, labor relations issues, all kinds of things that you wouldn't necessarily be exposed to, especially for more junior officers, you know, who aren't yet at that deputy director level. I think it's definitely a positive experience, and we could sell that to people a bit more actively, because we've got, I think, 11 vacancies coming up this year. So we're going to be looking for people. Charles, did you want to chime in on the issue of XCOM?
No.
Or of PASO, sorry.
No, that's fine. I'm learning about PASO myself too. So
and you know, I hope you'll consider putting your name forward for one of the vacancies. Now that I've got you on a Zoom thing, I'm not gonna forget where you are. Excellent. So if I don't know about you guys, but I can stay for another 15-20 minutes for sure. And so maybe we could open up the floor to questions. I don't know, I haven't seen any come in the Q&A section, but I don't know if there are participants who want to type in their questions in the Q&A box. We could answer them, or they can use the chat as well. Questions, comments from the floor? Not seeing anybody. So any last comments from anyone, any of the panel? Anything that didn't, how about let's get some random tips and tricks. Do you have any little bits of wisdom that didn't fit in any of this that you would like to pass on to people?
I do.
Okay. Charles, go ahead.
Bring a kitchen knife in your luggage.
Good. That's true. That's a very good point.
No.
Mine is when you're going to a conference, read the documents in the briefing book. Read the book. People will think you're a genius because nobody reads all the documents that go under the agenda items. So if you have read them through, and you know, especially if you've taken time to maybe like jot down 1 or 2 key points, people will think like, oh my God, you are such, you know, the best prepared person, because we don't do it. I'm seeing a question pop up. What is one of the biggest misconceptions about posting opportunities?
I can take that one, Pam. It's
okay,
awesome.
Go ahead.
I think when I started out, I think one lesson that my cohort learned is that HR is not going to necessarily give you the correct advice. Sometimes the advice they give you is to make their jobs easier. So if you've been out on posting for 10 years and they say you have to come back to headquarters, or if they say, you know, you're not eligible for that posting, go for it anyways, because more often than not, it turns out in your favor. The other big misconception I think about posting is you can do the best that you can. I've had it where I've had an ADM, 2 DGs, several directors advocating for me to get a posting, and they've just decided to go in another way. So don't take it personally. Keep doing and pick the posting that you want, not the posting that you think they want you to take.
Yeah, good point. I mean, HR, it's a big machine, right? So they have to fill organizational needs, and they will often encourage you in a direction that is convenient for organizational needs, but may not be convenient for you. So sometimes it can work out both ways, and doing the system a favor once in a while by saying, okay, I'll be the one to do this thing that is hard to fill or whatever, can be a good strategy and a positive experience. But I agree with Allison. If you want something, go for it. And when they say things like, oh, nobody's going to be cross-posted or whatever, just ignore that, because they do when they feel like it. Put your name out there, contact the managers, let them know you're interested, and see what happens. I mean, don't be obnoxious about it, but go. It comes back to that, not waiting for people to discover you or giving you permission. That applies for postings too. Charles, I see you smiling and nodding. You want to chime in?
Yeah, the another misconception. I don't know. My view is very MCO centric, right? But it's not it's not a single cylinder process. Use your network. Use everything you have in your network to get the product. It's not just putting your name in the system and trying to talk to the manager, trying to talk to this. No, you have to talk to a lot of different people to get the posting you want. And you have to talk to the right people. So you have to get informed. Who are the right people for this mission? Who has the leverage that you need for a posting? It's a lot of discussion. And you can't just put your name in there, put in a great letter, talk to the your manager that's going to be there. The HOM's going to have heavy influence on the process. So any advantage you want, if you want a posting, you just got to find any little advantage you have to work it. And don't be afraid to just send emails. And that's fine.
No, good point. I mean, one of the pieces of advice I often give to people too is be nice to your deputy directors, because I mean, they not just because that's us probably, but also because they are the ones often who are translating the ideas into reality, right? They're probably the ones who are doing the interviews on the headquarters side. They're the ones who are going to be sending the list to the embassy to say, who are these people? And chances are maybe that ambassador was somebody who was their deputy director back in the day. And even if you're not like the most obvious candidate, if you've made a good impression and they think that you've got the skills, there's a big difference between sending a list and saying, well, this is the person who was the top candidate. Here you go, end of story. And sending that message and also picking up the phone and saying, hey, you know what? We picked this person because even though their skills are not quite as obvious, we know them and we've seen them perform, blah, 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 blah. Like, they can have a lot of say over how something is perceived in getting a posting or an assignment. So it's worth making sure that you maintain those relationships. Colleen, did you want to chime in on that? The biggest misconception about postings?
Yeah, well, I would just wholeheartedly agree with what you and Shal said. It's like there's 0 degrees of separation in the foreign service. So the person that today is your subordinate, tomorrow is going to be your manager. So like, I go back to what I said before, I can't say it enough, just be a nice, normal, respectful human being, treat others as you would, treat yourself or would like to be treated. And you cannot go wrong in your career. Like that will, if you're trying hard and you're showing that your willingness to learn and just being, putting yourself out there, and that goes for shopping for postings as well, showing, don't highlight don't focus on your areas of weakness, but focus on your areas of strength and your proven track record and your ability to, you jumped in this other role and you learned it very quickly, so you could do the same in this context, or show that you're willing to put in the work, you've started to learn the language. Like, I think that, already going that extra step and really stating in various forms how you want that posting will be recognized. Like people can just put, say, oh, I want to go on this posting, but not really do the work that goes with it, which means, as I said, starting to learn the language, showing an interest, showing that you know something about the context that you're going into. And I've heard the advice from HOMs myself that said, there were people who contacted me just once, one email, and said, I'm interested in this posting. And there were other people who, kind of followed up. I think that there's a fine balance between being too pushy, Pam, as you said, and being proactive, but showing a genuine interest. And I think there's different ways that you can show that, different strategies. And also knowing that people talk often in the MCO world, the MCO will consult with the DMCO. So why wouldn't you pick up the phone and talk to the incumbent? Like, I think it would be poor judgment not to contact the incumbent because they're probably going to find out. So, don't assume that kind of, I guess, secrets are safe in foreign affairs where, it's like a big kind of family. It's dysfunctional at times, but, family nonetheless. And I think you can't go wrong with just, being honest, being an open person, and stating what you want and putting it out there and hoping that one way or another, you get what you're hoping for.
Yeah, no, thank you. Thank you. Good points. Allison, how about you? Biggest misconception?
I think, as other people said, if you don't talk to the incumbent, it's a red flag. If you are really interested in the position, let them know, talk to the incumbent first and ask the incumbent serious questions. I've had people contact me before where they're not interested in the job at all. They just want to talk about, the lifestyle. So you need to ask questions about the job to make sure you will actually enjoy it. And then the other thing I would say, because of the way our HR system works, where if you're looking for an acting position, you have to choose a certain number of positions at level. Be frank with those hiring managers. So don't be afraid to say to them, look, I'm hoping for an acting position, but of the at-level positions I've chosen, you are my first choice or you are my second choice. But don't waste their time, because that word will also circulate and people will not be happy with that.
Yeah, thanks. Good point. It does get very complicated with the current kind of staffing environment where there have not been enough people at level. There have been a lot of acting assignments and so on. And hopefully that will settle down a little bit, now that they've gone through some promotion exercises and they're starting to appoint people at level. I mean, hopefully we'll see, things work a little bit more closely like they say they work on paper. But yeah, very, very good points to keep in mind. John, how about you?
Honestly, it's been a while since I've been out, so it's hard for me to speak up on this topic. I would just say that what was mentioned earlier, the follow through is very important, and also be very honest with people. I mean, I've had situations where someone was like, say, "Well, I'm desperate for this job. I really want this job," and you've said, "Okay, you know what? You've done everything to help this person," and all of a sudden they take a different position. It turns out yours was not the one that they wanted, so which, when we were talking earlier about corridor reps and things like that, that's the kind of stuff that will then affect your postings, and especially your future postings, because that's the kind of stuff that gets out. So if it truly isn't your first choice, as someone else said earlier, tell them, look, I'm hoping for this, but this job also really interests me, because we all know the way HR works and everything else, that your first choice may not go to you, not even your second or your third. You might get your fourth, or even some choice you haven't even thought about yet. So, and we're, as a manager, I'm fine with that. I don't mind that. But just anyway, don't make promises and claims that you have no intention of keeping. So just be careful about that.
Yeah, no, good point. Good point. My other thing would be that there seems to be sometimes this idea among people that when they go on posting, they're never ever going to have to, spend a nickel or lift a finger to help themselves out on any aspect of life or logistics or anything like that. And I mean, perhaps our MCO reps could talk about this a little bit, but I remember being amazed once, several postings back at someone, not a GAC person, who was like, excuse my language, but bitching and whining about not having enough waste paper baskets in their SQ. And this was in a city that had shops and so on and so forth. And they were bugging the poor admin section to get them, because they didn't have enough wastebaskets. And I was like, how many did you have in your SQ? And I was like, oh, I only had 2 and I wanted 3. And so I went and I spent $6 and I bought myself some waste paper baskets, and I've kept my receipts. And if I get to $50 or whatever of stuff I've spent on my SQ, I may take it to admin and say, hey, can I be reimbursed for this? But otherwise, I'm not going to spend hours and hours complaining that I don't have a waste paper basket in my 3rd bathroom or whatever, right? So I think that is one misconception of posting, that everything's going to be taken care of. And, you need to be prepared to look after yourself, I think, the way you normally would, for your own happiness, if nothing else. Allison, did you want to chime in?
I think my biggest advice would be, if you wouldn't do it in Canada, why would you do it abroad? So again, readiness program manager, the number of calls I get, sometimes I'm like, why would you do that? And the other thing we see, particularly with first postings, and I do understand why it happens, but you embrace this "I'm a diplomat" phrase, and like Pam says, you suddenly become unable to do almost anything for yourself. So if you wouldn't do it in Canada, why would you do it overseas? So just remember that.
Yeah, like I've seen MCO colleagues, arrive at work on Monday or whatever, exhausted, because somebody has called them at, 6 o'clock on a Sunday morning because the VCR was broken. And, they absolutely desperately needed a new VCR. And I'm like, gee, what would you do in Canada if you woke up at 7:30 on Sunday morning and you couldn't, put your VCR on for some reason? You'd probably wait till Monday and take it to the VCR repair place then, right? And figure something else out for the rest of the day. So there are some of those kinds of things that I think fall into the misconception about what life is going to be like at a posting. Does anyone?
I was going to say you're dating yourself with the VCR reference.
I know, that's true. That's very true.
I mean, that being said, if it's
the culprits are all long gone from the department, so I feel like I can give that example without pointing fingers at anyone who might listen to this.
Yeah, and I mean, if it's an emergency, yes, people will step up and help. I have happily gone to people's houses at 2 or 3 in the morning to sit there while their kids sleep so they can take somebody to the hospital because it's an emergency. We've happily dealt with, you've run out of water, or the air conditioner stopped working, or there was a fire, and that's life or death stuff. But like Pam said, if it's like my dishwasher isn't working, that's not really an emergency. That can wait. You have to remember your colleagues are also entitled to time to themselves and are not expected to be, they're supposed to be reachable 24/7 on posting, which people seem to forget. But it doesn't mean they're necessarily going to drop everything that they're doing because your dishwasher stopped working.
Fair enough. Any last comments on this point? And then maybe I'll give everybody time to see if there is a last question. Colleen, go ahead.
Well, at the risk of being controversial, I think if you don't have the skills to figure out basic how to do kind of things around your home, I don't think you have any business being on posting. So I think, before you go out on posting, take some lessons in respecting others and how to, be an adult. And then once those are completed, then you can go on posting, because if that's how you are in your first posting, you probably won't have that much success in future postings, because that will get around that. Frankly, it's just lack of respect. And, the management and the concert team, that's not actually our main job. Is to, there are certain expectations and there are certain roles and responsibilities. And so I think that more than anything, I would encourage, before going on a posting, I think talk to your colleagues from all streams at the mission, get to know each other. And in this training period as well, I would encourage people to learn about what your colleagues do, to learn the do's and don'ts, and what you can gain from each other, rather than just coming in with preconceived notions and assumptions of what this stream or this officer does or does not do. I think get curious goes back to slide, whatever it was, 3 or 4. Get curious about your colleagues, and just show all around respect and be, a team player.
No, thanks. Good points. Very good points. And sad to say, my example of the person who couldn't figure out how to get themselves a waste paper basket was not someone on their first posting. And I think that perhaps that person, hadn't been called on it early on, and the behavior just continued, and it's really not helpful. But Charles, did you have anything you wanted to say? Any last words? Thanks for coming back. We lost you there for a second.
Yeah, thank you. My connection just died. No, I think Colleen did a lot of it, but yeah, how you behave is important. And also, let's not forget those kind of situations. The MCO is heavily involved in your personal life, in how you're going to be living conditions and whatnot. If you push your MCO, if you really harass your MCO because you think you should be getting something, don't forget the MCO is always acting as a balance between what Treasury Board, what the public funds it lets us do, and trying to make sure that you, as an employee living over there, your living conditions are as good as you can get. So it's important that if you're going to take this kind of approach and harass them, remember that you're going to need them at some point, and they're not going to be willing to go the extra mile to help you. And it's important because no matter what at a mission, when it comes to your living condition, the MCO will be involved at some point. So.
Good point. Very good point. There are people that you really don't want to irritate. And I would say that, the HOM is probably number 1, and then the MCO is, well, actually maybe number 1 sometimes, depending on the circumstances. So I'm not seeing any more questions. If anybody, we've still got 10 participants online. So if anybody wants to chime in on anything, now is your chance. Perhaps as we, and that just inspired one person to leave us, so we're down to 9. So maybe I'll just give everybody a chance to say their final words. Colleen, did you have any last thoughts to send everybody off with?
Sure, yeah, I just wanted to reiterate that there's a whole network of people out there willing to help. Don't hesitate to reach out for a coffee, virtual chat, as I mentioned before. It's a great department to work in. It's not without its kind of growing pains, but in my 12 years, I've seen a lot of progress. I've seen a lot of progress on the side of of advancement for women, diversity and inclusion. And I do see that we're moving in the right direction, and I see that the type of people that are being promoted, more and more, it's becoming people that are showing these key leadership competencies of respect for others. Cultural sensitivity, and cultural sensitivity goes, respecting each other and being respectful of different cultures within Canada and within GAC. So I think to leave you with anything, it's just this message that I've said throughout the whole webinar here is just to respect others, respect yourself, be cognizant of where you want to go, but also be cognizant of where you are now and what you can learn from where you're at now. So best of luck to everyone.
Thanks, Colleen. Allison, how about you? Any last words?
Yeah, same as Colleen. Don't be afraid to reach out to people if you have questions. When you're starting out, there's really no stupid questions because you don't really know what to expect. And I can understand you don't necessarily want to ask that of the higher ups, but reach out to your peers if you have questions. And then, find somebody. If there's a stream you're interested in looking at a new opportunity, reach out to somebody who's in that stream to see if the work is actually something that you were expecting and interests you. But don't be afraid to take chances, and don't be afraid to say no if something doesn't interest you.
Excellent, thanks. Good points. Charles, how about you? Last words? Les mots de sagesse.
Oh, les mots de sagesse. Ouf.
Well, it doesn't necessarily have to be wisdom. It could be anything.
No, I can say sagesse. Comme Allison et Colleen a dit, n'oubliez pas les personnes qui sont à côté de vous, ils peuvent vous appuyer. Mais le plus important dans tout ça, c'est qu'il ne faut pas oublier d'avoir du plaisir. On est ici, notre travail en tant que FS, c'est assez unique dans le gouvernement du Canada. C'est un travail qui est difficile, c'est un travail qui nous apporte beaucoup, mais une des plus grandes choses, c'est qu'il faut apprécier que tu es en poste et il ne faut pas oublier de s'amuser. Et ça, c'est bien important.
Merci beaucoup. So, John, how about you?
The only thing I would say is, because we've been talking about, the difficulty of like hardship postings. Don't just get turned off of hardship postings. I'll be honest, the hardship posting that I had was actually one of the most enjoyable postings I had. I actually really enjoyed it, and it was a lot of fun. I know it's not everyone's cup of tea, but I would say don't forget about the hardship postings. There are different hardship levels out there. They may be 5s, but there are different 5s out there. And then, of course, the lower levels as well. And sometimes some of the most rewarding work can be there because it's not as easy to operate in those places. And so the impact that you can have is actually greater, especially considering they tend to be smaller teams for the most part as well, too. And so I think that's basically about all I want to. Oh, and also the one last thing was, sometimes you don't get any of your choices. It's not the end of the world. It's happened to me, where I put in 1 year, I didn't get a single choice. I waited till next year and applied again. So don't be discouraged. It's the nature of the beast sometimes. But you will hopefully get out on posting at some point, and preferably to a place that you'd like to go. So don't lose hope.
Yeah, I fully concur with John here on the hardship and on the fact that fully. Hardships are great.
Thanks. Yeah, no, well, I've only been, of all of my postings, the only one that wasn't a hardship was in Warsaw, which at that time was a hardship too. I mean, it's not anymore. And the whole question of how hardship ratings are assigned is another story. But yeah, definitely. And there's a constituency for every kind of post, right? That's what I've observed in my career. There are people who will only want to go to London and Washington and so on. There are people who really thrive in the more difficult posts, and you may be surprised at what turns out to work best for you as you go along. So kind of comes back to the idea of trying things. So I guess we'll wrap up. I will give you my last words, and as I'm talking, I'll watch out for that one last question if anybody listening wants to type it in. But my advice to everyone would be really, it comes back to that: look out for yourself. Remember that you're in charge of your own career, that you are not a prisoner. It's not indentured servitude. You need to think for yourself about what you really like, what you want to do. And I think that I made a decision a few years ago after coming back from Kabul that I was going to think of myself as kind of like a plumber or like a hired gun consultant, and look at opportunities in the department in terms of, is it interesting? Am I going to build some skills? Am I going to be working with good people? Is it doing worthwhile work? And keep making those decisions on a sort of assignment to assignment basis, not worrying too much about being promoted or those bigger kind of corporate things, because the winds change, and you'll find, like John says, one year you'll be approached by 5 or 6 different people, even places you haven't applied, to say, hey, do you want to go on posting? Do you want to go on an assignment? The next year you might be actually looking, and all of a sudden you feel like you're not getting any uptake. A lot of that is out of your control. But what is in your control is your own personal career and whether you are doing what you want to do. I mean, and of course, part of what I want to do anyway is be a good colleague and be constructive and so on. But I think it's really important to remember that at the end of the day, It's you and your life. And you have to think about that. That said, there are a lot of people out there who are willing to help you. There are your colleagues, there are senior people in both GAC and IRCC. There's PAFSO here as a dedicated resource. And there are plenty of people who can reach out for advice. I think it's like it's J.R. Tolkien who has a quote about, everyone is on their individual journey. But others have made similar journeys, and there are some maps. So there is advice, and there's wisdom that can be gained. Just on another note, our next breakfast will be on the second Tuesday of July, which I now have lost my calendar and can't remember what the date is. And we're going to talk about the full-time presidency that I mentioned, and what came out in the evaluation, and what our next steps are on looking at making that a permanent part of the PAFSO structure. Very happy to report that according to the evaluators, the pilot has done its job, and that 85% of the members who contributed do want to see this become permanent. But there are some questions that we still need to look at, like how, what the costs are going to be long-term, how it's all going to fit in with everything else. So XCOM will be taking the summer to come up with a recommendation, and then there'll be a vote in the fall. And next month's breakfast we'll start off talking about that. So I'm going to stop the recording now.